New life. Fresh breeze. That's really what Easter is all about, isn't it? When we get to the end of ourselves, when we have surrendered on Good Friday, let everything consummate. That we can rest and we can come back to something that we never expected, something that seemed absolutely impossible. New life. Fresh breeze. And so this morning on Easter Sunday, what do we want to ask ourselves? Except what is the meaning of resurrection? It should be simple, right? For those of us who are raised in the Christian tradition, it's something that's been pounded into us our entire lives. The resurrection is the physical, bodily resurrection of Jesus after 3 days in the tomb. And because Jesus rose bodily from the grave, it is the proof that he is the Son of God. And if he is the Son of God, then therefore he has the power to save us. He has the power to resurrect us, resurrect humanity, bring us back to new life. And yet, as simple as that may sound, and as straightforward as it has been for most of us, most of our lives, it's controversial. Absolutely controversial. Christians and throughout Christianity, throughout Christendom, are all over the map when it comes to the resurrection. Now, most of us agree that Jesus is alive, but not how Jesus is alive. There's one Episcopal priest who wrote a book saying that the resurrection is something that the disciples had to learn, had to see, something that they realized spiritually within themselves. And that overshadowed any question of a physical resurrection. That's pretty extreme. But it's part of Christianity. It's part of Christian thought. As we come to these scriptures, we find ourselves looking at them in different ways. We find them speaking to us in different ways. Ultimately, the resurrection is a matter of faith. Always has been since the very beginning, and it remains so today. But where can we look for guidance? Where can we look to find out what we are convinced of? And fortunately, the Gospels tell us where to look. The Gospels show us where we can look for what's important. Now, we like to focus on the supernatural miracle. Obviously, that's where all the juice goes. That's what we think about so much. And all the fights and all the debates center around the mechanics of that actual resurrection, that moment. But then again, it can never be proven historically. It can never be proven empirically. It remains a matter of faith for all of us, if we're honest about it. But the Gospels show us to look for what's important. The Gospels will give us the main takeaway that we need. Notice this. The Gospels focus on the effect that the resurrection had on Jesus' followers, not on the resurrection event itself. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever thought about that? Because it's a huge distinction. And it makes us crazy because we want the details. We want to know what happened in that tomb. We want to know how it all worked. We got the Shroud of Turin. We got all these things. We're trying to figure it out. How does it work? Give me the details. I want to know. But the resurrection happens offstage. We get no details. The story simply picks up after the resurrection. And it follows Jesus' friends as they try to understand what has happened to them. The tiny, unspectacular moments and reactions that they have. That's where the Gospels focus. The story in the Gospels tells us where to look for meaning, not at the miracle itself, but how the miracle affects the lives of everyone who considers it. And so the main question that we should be asking ourselves isn't whether we believe the miracle. It's what difference it makes that we believe. That is always the central question. What difference does it make that we say we believe? And what can Jesus' friends' reactions teach us about ourselves as we are moving through our faith walk just as they did through theirs? It's always been fascinating to me that no one recognizes the risen Jesus the first time they see him. Is that another thing that you have thought about? Another detail? And is a detail like that important? I'll tell you what, the Gospels are pretty short. There's not much there. And they're compressed and they're concise. So every detail that is there is for a particular reason. There are no wasted words. Every detail is on purpose, showing something that needed to be conveyed through the original intent of the authors. Remember that great quote from Mark Twain? If I had more time, I would have written a shorter book. It's hard to write short, but when you do, you are absolutely concerned with every word, every line. Is it relating to what you want to say? You're not throwing a bunch of adjectives at this. If there is a detail there, you can bet it's important. Now we wonder, because we're looking at this literally, it's what we do, right? We wonder, did Jesus look different somehow? When they first saw him, that he had a different face? Was he somehow trying to hide himself for some reason? Why would he do that? Well, we don't know, but what's going on here? Why wouldn't they recognize him? They just spent the last 3+ years of their lives, day in and day out with this man. How could they not recognize him when he's right in front of them? But when we look for these physical reasons and we limit ourselves to a physical understanding, we're missing the gospel's point. It's not about Jesus' appearance at all. It's about the followers and our reaction and responses to seeing something that we could never conceive of, seeing something that to us seems impossible. And so the point that the gospel is making is that seeing the risen Jesus is a process, not an event. It's a process of becoming ready to see the impossible in your life, to see something that absolutely could not occur according to everything that you know about yourself and the world, science, everything. Now, in saying this, what I am not saying is that this wasn't a physical event. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that the Gospels put the overriding importance on the spiritual process that Jesus' followers go through in order to be able to recognize him as risen, to see him as risen. And the implication here is that without the process, the event doesn't exist, not for us, until and unless we have gone through the process of becoming ready to see. Because it is beyond physical seeing that we're talking about here. The spiritual process of becoming ready, growing new eyes, as Jesus loved to say, he who has ears, let him hear. He who has eyes, let him see. This is what we're trying to do, is grow the new eyes that we can see something that has eluded us before. And this process is always based in intimacy. I love the Psalms. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste and see. Not sit and think. Taste and see. We can think about something remote. We can see something across the parking lot. But when you taste something, that's the most intimate thing that you can do. It's the most vulnerable thing that you can do. Taste and see. This process is going to take us into a vulnerable intimacy without which nothing occurs. Think about that. Always based in intimacy. And so the first followers' reactions, Marion read one, and Marion read one, Vernon read one. But think about Mary's first reaction. She comes out of the tomb. She doesn't understand what she's seeing. The tomb is empty. She's imagining that someone stole the body. She's breaking down. She's sobbing. And then she hears this voice, "Why are you crying?" And she tries to get herself together again. You know, they've taken my Lord. She is handling this as if she would handle any transaction at the marketplace, you know, because she is fully expecting Jesus to be where they planted him on Friday night, and he's not there. It's not until he says her name, right? Miriam. Miriam. It's like it breaks the spell. Just the sound of that name, the way he would have called her 1,000+ times. The intimacy of that call, the sound of his voice breaks through. And suddenly she sees. Now, I believe that just like the 40 days that we talk about of Lent was not a literal 40 days, it's a much longer period of time. It probably took Miriam longer to get to this point. But it would have been that kind of intimacy, that kind of connection that brought her through. Clopas and his friend, who are walking to Emmaus, which is just a few miles from Bethany, they're joined by a third traveler, and he's talking to them about what happened and what's going on, and they're amazed that he doesn't know the events of the last few days. But they get into this whole theological conversation, and by the time that they get to Emmaus, and it's getting late, and it's time to go in for dinner, they beg him to stay because they're having such a good conversation. And it's not until sitting at the table, just like they did a few days before, when Jesus breaks the bread and passes it out to them, suddenly they realize just that gesture, that simple, tiny gesture that they had seen 1,000,000 times, that grounds them again, breaks the spell, breaks them through into being able to see. Weeks later, when they go back to the Galilee, and Peter says, I'm going fishing. Well, that's a bigger statement than just saying I'm going fishing. What he's basically saying is I'm going to go back to my old way of life. I mean, what can I do here? We got to eat. You know, this thing is over. We got to start something new. And so he's going back to his trade. He's going back to being a fisherman. And they go out and they're catching nothing all night long, of course. And here's this voice from the shore. Try putting your nets on the other side of the boat. There's got to be something that just unwires your brain at a moment like that, why you would do something, but they do, and they catch the fish. And then they recognize who they think this is, and by the time they get back to the beach, what is he doing? He's sitting on his heels in the sand, tending a fire, cooking fish for breakfast. It's not a big, spectacular event. The clouds didn't part. The angels didn't sing. He's sitting on the beach, cooking breakfast, as he had done so many times before. In each encounter and any of the others, it's the smallest, most intimate gesture that breaks the spell, that allows us to move past what we think we know, what we think is possible, what we think limits our experience, into something completely and radically different. It's like those identity security questions that you get that are so stupid, you know? What was your first pet's name? What was your third grade teacher's name? You know, what was this? They're getting really creative with them. I saw a few I'd never seen before lately. But they're asking you questions that only you would know, and they're tiny things. They're not the big things. They can Google the big things of your life, right? Never done that? Your whole life's out there. But these tiny little things, no. Only you know that. And it's those tiny little things that we know about each other. This is what Jesus is trying to show us. This is what the Gospels are trying to show us. We only really know someone after experiencing the intimate details with them. And the Gospels are showing Jesus' friends' process of re-experiencing intimacy with him in a very different way, proving his identity to themselves, becoming convinced, yes, he does live, he is alive. And it's going to be the same with us. The meaning of resurrection is not out there somewhere. It's not an event that we can point to somewhere. It's not in history. It's not in theological doctrine that we're going to find this meaning. It's within us. It's among us. It's in our midst. It's going to be always in the most intimate details of our lives and our relationships. And it's through this process of letting intimate experience convince us beyond our intellect, beyond our minds, all the way to the point that we can begin to trust the impossible. Trust what we never thought could ever take place. Because without that trust, we don't change. We don't transform. We stay defended. We stay victimized. We stay in whatever mental state we are. But the trust allows us to break the spell, to move forward. And so the second question that we need to ask, if we are convinced that Jesus lives, and I'm convinced, where do you look for him? Where do we look for him now? He's not present the way he was to those first followers. How is he present to us? And again, the Gospels come to our rescue. The Gospels show us where to look. Luke 24, that wonderful line, why do you seek the living among the dead? Oh, ever had a line you wish you wrote? That's it. Why do you seek the living among the dead? It's the central clue to seeing the risen Jesus. I used to think that if I hadn't gotten the chance to walk with Jesus for 3 or 4 years the way the disciples did, that I would never miss him in his risen form. Yeah, I was that certain of myself. As if it was purely physical, as if it was a purely physical dynamic that I was dealing with, and if I had seen him, I would know him. Really. I spent a full decade years ago looking for Jesus. And I looked in all the places I thought he would be. I looked in church. I looked in religion. I looked in theology. I looked in the Bible, in my studies. I looked everywhere. I expected him to be. In my beliefs, in my ideas, in my thoughts. And guess what? He wasn't there. Because the moment that we settle on a belief or an idea about God, the moment that we think that we're certain, God is not there. Jesus is not there. Why? Because life and spirit are defined by motion. The ancient languages mean the motion at the same time they mean spirit. Living things move. No motion, no life. That's simple. A set belief, though, is static. It is motionless in your mind. It's dead. It's no longer among the living. Jesus is not there. Not in your thoughts that you think about Jesus, in any way that you do. Static beliefs can never let us see living, moving life. Can't do it. It's taking a snapshot of a hummingbird. By the time you're looking at the snapshot, the bird is long gone doing whatever birds do. But you're left holding this, thinking you're looking at the real thing. It's static. It's dead. It's motionless. Our static beliefs can never let us see the paradoxical God of infinite possibility. Because all we can see through our minds is what we can preconceive, what we expect to see. The Gospels are showing us where to look for the risen Jesus, right in the heart of everyday life. Because if we can't find him here now, if we can't find the miracle of new life here now, then we've missed the meaning of resurrection. We've missed the hour of our visitation. What do you think it felt like for Jesus' friends to experience resurrection? To really experience it, to break through. The gospel gives us clues. Never tells us things directly, right? But gives us clues. It must have felt like coming home. Intimate, familiar, and yet wildly changed at the same time. After all, Jesus could walk through walls. Now that's pretty different, right? And until the resurrection, for all those followers became intimate. For them, it didn't exist. They couldn't see it. They couldn't recognize him. Because a resurrection is not an idea. It's not a concept. It's not a doctrine. It's an intimate experience. When someone you love calls your name, doesn't everything in you respond from your toes on up? Doesn't it feel like home to hear that inflection, that tone of voice? Nothing is more spectacular than that, and yet nothing is more mundane at the same time. That's the paradox. When a simple gesture of just breaking and sharing food completely disarms us and draws us in, it also opens our eyes to trust. Jesus is always among the living, among each detail of our relationships. But as soon as we decide where he's supposed to be, he's not there. We will miss him. We will not recognize him. Here we are looking for Jesus in the clouds to come through us through parted clouds and rays of sunshine. And where is he? He's cooking breakfast in the sand. Who cooked your breakfast this morning? Did you recognize that person? Resurrection is the central tenet of the Christian faith. It's huge. It's transcendent. And it absolutely should be. It defines us. It defines us as followers. And nothing I'm saying here is meant in any way to diminish the immensity of the resurrection, even as a theological concept or as a doctrine, as a point of our faith. But as long as that concept, that doctrine remains just a theological concept, something that we will debate, then it hasn't affected us intimately. Jesus saw his Father in every intimate detail of his life. Look at the birds. Look at the flowers. Everything that he saw as a reflection of, an embodiment of his Father. And he called such awareness in life kingdom. Live this way. See this way. See this new life. See this fresh breeze in everything that you do. His friends couldn't see that he had risen until they saw him in every detail of their lives. Right here, right now, right there, and right then. And neither will we. Because it's not what you believe. It's what difference it makes that you believe. We find the living and risen Lord in each face and each embrace, or not at all. This is what the Gospels are trying to tell us, that Jesus is always in motion, among the living, in motion, our motion, among the living. That's us. We are the living. Where are we going to find Jesus? Look for him here. Look for him now. Look for him in every connection that you live and experience. He is here, now, within, among, in the midst of, always among the living, never the dead. If we can adjust our sights, if we can see what the Gospels and where the Gospels are pointing us, we can realign, reprioritize the most important things about our faith moving forward, the most important things about us as followers going forward. And we can start to cherish every moment, every face, every embrace along the way. That's the message of Easter.